Yo, what's going on, everybody? Welcome back. It is a brand new episode of Liam's First Look. And of course, this week we are talking about none other than UFC 295. We got Jiri Prochazka back in the driver's seat, taking on Alex Poatan Pereira. We will either have a returning light heavyweight champion or we will have a two-weight division UFC champion in Alex Poatan Pereira. And it's all going down on Saturday night. Should be a very exciting fight card. We've got two short notice title fights put together in the light heavyweight division, in the heavyweight division, two divisions historically that scream variance and violence as well. So extremely excited to break it all down with you. Shout out to everybody who's rocking with us live in the chat. I know a lot of you guys are preparing for Monday Night Football and all these other things going on, but wanted to get to you guys early in the week. I will also have timestamps. We'll have clips of all the show broken down for you guys to make it more convenient on the rewatch. But without further ado, let's start on First Look like we always do with that main event of the evening. We're coming off of a winning night at UFC Sao Paulo. It was a great event. We hit some underdogs. My guy Rich absolutely spazzed. But we kept it very tight on the slate, 3 bets, and had one nice plus money winner with Nicholas Dalby. Got us a very good return on the event. So we're getting right back to work on this fight card, and we always start with the main event on First Look. Jiri Prochazka, he has been out for quite some time, but I will tell you, the last time he was around, 10 units max bet on Jiri Prochazka against Glover Teixeira. That was a very dicey one, but a winner nonetheless at minus 200. So really, really happy to cash that bet. And now I'm really excited to see Jiri Prochazka back. I mean, if you guys are fight fans, if you guys enjoy watching fighting, you love Jiri Prochazka. I don't know how you wouldn't. The guy is insane. He goes out there and invites violence for and against. And he's just put on a number of really fun wars over the course of his career. That's in Ryzen and that's in the UFC. You look at a lot of guys that get pushed up the card quickly. Look at an Abus Magomedov, right? How quickly the tables have turned. He goes from, getting that quick win, that quick finish over Dustin Stoltzfus. He gets vaunted into a UFC main event. Then he gets run over by Sean Strickland. They bring him down the card. They give him Caio Barajo, no favors, right? And now he's dealing with 2 losses in a row. But Jiri Prochazka, they threw him right into the deep end of the pool. Former title challengers, really difficult, obstacles along the way. He comes in against, Volkan Ozdemir after dusting CB Dalloway, Fabio Maldonado, Muhammad Lawal. Those are all UFC level fighters. Bruno Capoloza, Carl Albrechtsen, other guys that have made, some waves in Bellator or PFL or these other organizations. So he has been beating good fighters like Vadim Nemkov way back in the day in Ryzen. He's had all these wins, but then he gets to the UFC. Volkan Ozdemir, title challenger, beats him. Dominic Reyes, title challenger, beats him. Both with vicious knockouts. And that's what vaunted him to that title shot, right? Jiri Prochazka, just 2 wins in the organization, gets the title shot and delivers. 5th round finish, really back and forth fight. It looked at various points like Glover Teixeira had knocked this man out, but Jiri just doesn't die. You see so many times he gets hurt, rocked, wobbled, and he finds a way to continue. He finds a way to grab a hold of somebody. He finds a way to keep on fighting. And that's what makes him an entertaining fighter. Now, against somebody like Alex Poatan Pereira, against a professional kickboxer, against a guy who's world-class on the feet and also has an insane highlight reel, you don't necessarily want to trade those kind of blows. So that's what makes this fascinating matchmaking. That's what makes this a really interesting fight. On the one hand, I think that Jiri Prochazka has shown in the past that he has real skills on the ground as well. He's not a conventional grappler. He's not a conventional wrestler, but he is a guy that has skills in all positions. We saw him last time out. Let's not forget, submit a, very world-class Brazilian jiu-jitsu practitioner in Glover Teixeira. So shout out to our guy Ghost says, I describe Jiri as a dude swinging a samurai sword saying, what could go wrong? Oh, that. Alex, I believe, is actually 3-0 in New York City, Rich, if I'm not mistaken. He's definitely gotten multiple wins inside the Garden. So Pereira is one of these guys that the UFC definitely likes to put in this headlining role, right? He went against Israel Adesanya, got that 5th round stoppage, really impressive stuff. And I think that both of these guys have power in their hands. They've got explosive finishing. But I do think that we've seen questionable grappling out of Alex Pereira on a number of occasions. I think that Israel Adesanya had some success grappling against him in their contest the first time in the UFC. which was a little bit surprising. Alex got a takedown as well, but his wrestling, his grappling, it looked very sloppy in that fight. It looked very sloppy against Michailidis as well. So there's been a couple times I felt like Alex has looked dicey in the grappling, and no time more so than that last time out against Jan Blachowicz, right? Gets taken down, gives up his back. He's in horrible positions, and Jan Blachowicz is a little bit older, right? He's a little bit long in the tooth. He has already, tasted that title glory. He was trying to crawl his way back to that top spot, and he wasn't able to do it, but he was able to put Alex in a lot of danger, and he was able to slow Poatan down by putting him in those grappling situations early. Felt like it took a lot of the sting off of Pereira's blows down the stretch, and I do think that Jiri Prochazka is a guy that could potentially mix up the wrestling and the grappling in this fight. I think he would be very wise to do so. And I just think that he also can compete on the feet. Now, is he a little bit open with his defense? Is he a little bit hands low for my liking? Yeah, he definitely is. He invites a little bit of risk, but we also have some question marks about Jiri coming into this spot. Was he dealing with a shoulder injury? Was he dealing with a USADA suspension? There's a lot of, rumors, speculation, innuendo that's out in the community at this point, but I don't have that information myself. So what I can go based on is the fact that when we've seen him compete, he normally fights tooth and nail like a dog for your money. And he was last time out favored -200 against Glover Teixeira, the guy who, has been teaching up Alex Pereira on how to compete in mixed martial arts. And now he's an underdog to his protege here. Maybe you could argue that the hardware is superior for Alex Pereira, and that's the ultimate difference maker. He's got more power. And we did see Glover rock Jiri Prochazka with that left hook as well. But I just think of Jiri Prochazka as a guy that finds ways to survive. I thought he was knocked out by Dominic Reyes, who, by the way, I bet in that fight at +125. I thought Dominic had him literally as good as KO'd, and he still found a way to come back in that fight. I mean, it was a little bit of a lapse in IQ by Dominic Reyes, but still, it showed the heart of a champion, I thought, from Jiri Prochazka, and the same thing that we saw last time against Glover. So now he's had some time off. He's had some R&R, rest and recovery. So I think that this is a really interesting matchup, but I'm surprised a little bit to see Jiri Prochazka at plus money. I did expect this to be a pick'em price because I think both guys have a lot of questions to answer. For Alex Pereira, is he going to be a light heavyweight champion in the UFC? Is he of that quality? Is he of that ilk? He definitely has skills. He's got real abilities, and he's huge, right? He was a huge middleweight, but we saw against Jan Blachowicz, one of the elder statesmen of the division, that, he could definitely be in very close fights. He's not going to make it clean, clear, unanimous wins every time out at light heavyweight. And I do think that this is a unique challenge in Jiri Prochazka, who's very dangerous in all phases of MMA. So my early lean, my first look is actually towards the underdog here, Jiri Prochazka. I think that it's a very fascinating fight, but I think that Jiri offers a lot. And one thing I always talk about, guys, is getting, younger fighters with more experience. We've got the 31-year-old Jiri Prochazka here, who's got way more mixed martial arts experience. He's 5 years younger than Alex Pereira, and he is the slight underdog in the contest. So for those reasons, yeah, I'm going to lean ever so slightly towards Jiri in that main event, but I'm going to say, this is my first look. If you guys are new here, I do more research, more due diligence throughout the week. I tape study the fights very in depth. I look into the market, every aspect of the fight that I possibly can. And from there, I try and form a final opinion that I bring back to you guys on Thursday for bets and banter. But right now, I'm definitely leaning towards Jiri Prochazka in my gut. Next up, we've got Sergei Pavlovich taking on Tom Aspinall. Fantastic fight here as well. Another fight put together on short notice, and two guys that I like, but definitely like Sergei Pavlovich more as a fighter. He's fun to watch, guys. He's a absolute knockout threat. He goes out there and he's looking to take guys out in the first round. He's looking to walk people down and put that Russian power on them, man. He's got power in his hands. He's an excellent boxer. He's got good hand speed for this heavyweight division. And so far, so good, right? He came in, and I think that the UFC, this is my perception, and I could be wrong here, but I felt like what we saw from Sergei Pavlovich on his rise through the division, right, was that the UFC came in and saw this heavyweight guy with a lot of wins, a lot of finishes, and they're like, man, let's put him in there with Overeem. Let's get him a big win, and let's put a rocket ship on this guy, send him to the moon. And he goes in there against Overeem, and he was a little too green. He got those debutante jitters. He got beat up a little bit, and he got finished badly by Alistair Overeem. But he came in there, and I believe he headlined that card, guys, in his very first UFC fight. So when I think about that, I'm like, man, they've had their eye on this guy for a while. They bring him in, they try and put him in a high profile situation. Doesn't work out. So then what did they do? How did the UFC respond? Well, now he's 18-1 as a professional. How did it change? He goes from 12-0 against Overeem, takes the L in that spot, beats Marcelo Gome via instant knockout. I'll retweet my notes on that fight. I tweeted them out last time he was fighting, and guys, it's literally less than one. The screenshot is less than a Twitter icon. It's 140 characters or less. All the notes on the fight with Marcelo Gome. It was very quick. Maurice Green, another guy, low-level heavyweight, just dispatches of him easily. Shamil Abdurakhimov, a guy that is big, brolic Russian, kind of gives people a little bit of an awkward go. There was the clip last week going around of him punching Jailton Almeida right in the face after catching the kick in the early going. So I think that there's a lot of, good notes about that fight, right? Sergei Pavlovich had the right idea there, was able to stuff takedowns, I believe, as well, if my memory serves. But either way, just getting to guys early with the power, takes out Derek Lewis, takes out Tai Tuivasa, takes out Curtis Blades, 3 in a row. And that is what brings him to this situation. He was the backup fighter, I believe, scheduled for the John Jones and Stipe Miocic fight. And unlike poor Mateusz Gamrot, he didn't get screwed out of the shot. Sergei Pavlovich instead gets the opportunity here to step in on short notice. And I think that Tom Aspinall is a solid fighter. I think he's got good skills everywhere, but I do still have some question marks about Aspinall, right? I tried to fade him with Alexander Volkov, and that was a spot where Volkov went out there. He looked a little bit old in that fight. He looked a little bit slow, and I believe he had just had a child. I don't know if he slept enough in that camp. My guy just did not look like he was in a good position, right? I felt like Tom Aspinall has exceeded my expectations in some ways. Guys with British wrestling and grappling accolades don't always turn out, but we saw last week with Mark Diakese, he was able to get it done against a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt from Brazil. And in this, spot, Tom Aspinall, I do think, has proven more on the ground in the UFC, right? We've seen from Tom Aspinall, he's got, a knowledge of submissions. He's got a knowledge of the passing game. He's got an ability to move around on the mat. But I think that some of the takedowns that Aspinall's been getting have been people that weren't really expecting him to wrestle, and kind of got caught by surprise. Arlovsky, if you guys remember that fight, was starting to get off on some shots. He did get beat up by Aspinall in the early going, but Aspinall kind of spent himself looking for the KO there, then was starting to gas out, it looked like, but got the easy takedown and the easy submission in round 2 in that spot. But I remember thinking there, man, is this guy for real? Then he goes out there against Sergei Spivak. That was the worst looking Sergei Spivak, that I've ever seen. And he also hit him with a knee to the body and an elbow up top and got the finish, very elementary fashion. That's a combination that he used to take out Jake Collier as well. If you got a soft body at heavyweight, if you got that big belly, Aspinall can be very savvy with that knee to the body and that elbow break combination. I think that Pavlovich will probably be hip to that in this spot. And I think he's going to want to try and keep distance. I think that if you're Aspinall, you dealt with a leg injury in the UFC, right? Went down to the knee injury against Curtis. So when I think about that, I'm like, is he going to throw a lot of leg kicks here? Because I think that one of the ways you want to take out a guy like Pavlovich is you want to try and get that lead leg, out from underneath him. He's a boxer. He wants to get in your face and box with you. So if you're going to fight a guy who wants to box, look at what Jonathan Martinez did to Adrian Yanez. It actually lays out a great blueprint. You want to take out their lead leg. You want to prevent that ability to get off with clean jabs, for example, to step into the pocket, with disregard. And so when I think about this matchup, beating Marcin Tybura doesn't tell me much. Marcin Tybura kind of folds up shop against these more athletic guys. Alexander Volkov, a little bit older, a little bit longer in the tooth, has been finished on a couple of occasions. He's historically pretty durable, but if you've got real skills at heavyweight, you can cause him some problems. Sergei Spivak, a guy that is a little bit hit and miss, right? In his losses, he looks terrible. In his wins, he tends to look pretty dominant. So he's a little bit up and down in that way. Alain Badeau, Andrei Arlovsky, Jake Collier. I don't mean to lump them all together. Obviously, Andrei Arlovsky, former champion, but he's certainly past his prime, long since past his prime. And like I said, that was a somewhat competitive fight at various points. And then on the other side of things, Alain Badeau, horrible fighter. Just not very good. Jake Collier, not very good. So I don't think that Tom Aspinall has necessarily proven all that much. I would actually argue that the run of wins for Sergei Pavlovich is slightly more impressive. And on top of that, the way that he dominated on the Russian regional scene, in my opinion, is slightly more impressive than what Aspinall was managing on the UK regional scene. Because part of my skepticism about Aspinall is he does show losses inside the distance against Stuart Austin and Lucas Parabiak. Now, granted, the Lucas Parabiak loss was a disqualification, but the Stuart Austin loss was like a really comical heel hook type loss. Not a good look in that spot. Granted, it was a long time ago. That was all the way back in 2015. I don't think he's getting heel hooked by Sergei Pavlovich, but I do just think there are some questionable pieces of footage on the Aspinall side. So I do think he's a good fighter. I think he's very talented. But I also think that if there's a plus money number by Sergei Pavlovich's name, it's probably something I'm going to have to be interested in, because I think that the guy has been nothing but productive as an underdog. He's been explosive with his power. He's been really, really devastating in how he gets after it early. And I worry slightly about his cardio, but I don't think that Aspinall has very proven cardio either. And if my memory serves, let's just take a look. Aspinall has never been to a decision in all of his professional bouts. And I do not think that's the case for our guy Pavlovich. Yeah, Pavlovich is actually 3-0 in fights that go the distance. And let me just see something here. I want to see if any of those fights were scheduled 5 rounds. I know that the first 2 I'm looking at in AMC Fight Nights Global were both unanimous decisions. Yeah, he even has one 5 by 5 minute round unanimous decision when he was 10-0 back in 2017. So I just think Sergei Pavlovich probably going slightly underrated coming into this weekend. I think both guys are real, but I just think, at plus money, I would probably be looking towards the Sergei Pavlovich side. I think Just Win actually hit the nail on the head. Either can win on any given day. No one should be confident on this fight. I agree. So that's why I think it's a dog or pass situation. And I think Pavlovich is just a murderous puncher, really, really dangerous guy. And I kind of feel like if they had put Tom Aspinall in there for his UFC debut against Alistair Overeem, maybe he faces the same fate, because he went in there for his UFC debut against Jake Collier, right? It's just a completely different point of view. So I just think Sergei Pavlovich at plus money, probably on the up and up. But again, first look. So I'll come back to you guys with more educated opinion later in the week, but I've liked Sergei Pavlovich. I bet him for a lot of units against Derek Lewis. So take that for whatever it's worth. Next up, a fight I'm really excited about, guys. We've got 2 women that have made me some money. And Jessica Andrade, my hat is off to her, okay? My hat is off to you, Jessica Andrade. She has made me so many coins. And I just got to shout her out for that. Whether it's betting on her, whether it's betting against her, I've just had a very good read on Jessica Andrade fights through the years. Now, this is an interesting one because I feel like Jessica kind of has her back up against the wall in this spot. She's coming off of 3 straight losses. She's taking on MacKenzie Dern, who's been up and down in her UFC career, no doubt about it. But I do think that MacKenzie Dern, her last time out, showed probably her best career form to date. When I think about what I saw from Angela Hill, I saw Angela Hill really try and will herself to a victory, really try and survive every position, be diligent, deal with the pressure, deal with the pace. But MacKenzie Dern just beat her ass in every position, beat her up on the feet, took her down to the mat. When Angela Hill was on top, MacKenzie Dern found a way to sweep and get on top. It's like she just never let Angela Hill rest in that fight. And I thought that we saw a much more focused, much more aggressive, much more determined MacKenzie Dern. I had some small exposure to Dern KO plus 2,500, and I was disgusted that I did not cash it in that spot. And, I think that this is a fight where MacKenzie Dern is being given a opportunity. Jessica Andrade has been on hard times. If you look at her recent run in the UFC, let's just talk about it. Since 2019, let's just talk about this run of results. She loses to Zhang Wei Li via knockout. No problem. Rose Namajunas via split decision. That could have been a draw. That could have been very close, right? Caitlin Shukagian gets the knockout victory there. Nice win for her up at 125 pounds. At 125 pounds, she then fights Valentina Shevchenko and gets smushed like a bug. It was not a competitive contest at all. She then fights Cynthia Calvillo and knocks her out in the first round. Calvillo really hasn't looked like herself lately. Amanda Lemos, she submits via arm triangle in round 1. I did predict that one. I did say it was a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt against the dancer, and I had the sub at plus 600. So I thought that was kind of a layup spot for her. And then she fought Lauren Murphy, and I thought she should get the finish there. I thought she should smash her, and she did kind of beat her up, but she didn't show necessarily that same killer instinct, that same finishing instinct that we saw in some of her other fights. And so I thought that was a bit of a problem, right? Erin Blanchfield, real deal Holyfield, one of New York and New Jersey's finest. Stand up, Section 9 in the building, but New York, more importantly, in the building. This one's going down at Madison Square Garden. You know that. So we're looking here at Erin Blanchfield, gets the absolute number on Jessica Andrade. Yan Xiaonan beats her up, knocks her out in the first round. Absolutely unbelievable. And then Tatiana Suarez, guys, goes out there and just runs her with that, wrestling pressure, that grappling pressure. So Andrade, 3 losses in a row, really needs to get back on that winning track for her career. But at 32 years of age, with a lot of fights already under her belt, is she going to be able to do that? That is what is curious here. She's 15-10 overall in the promotion. So despite having wins at all these weight classes, despite being very competitive with all these girls, multi-talented, no doubt about it, competitive in all phases, MacKenzie Dern, I think, is going to be very similar sized, if not bigger. She's 8-3 in the UFC. She's done all of her competing for the most part in this 115-pound weight class. And you look at the losses over the years. Amanda Hebos, that was all the way back in 2019. Amanda Hebos, very good on the ground and was a little bit one step ahead of Dern on the feet, just faster, a little bit more potent with the jab, went pop, 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 and fired off too much volume. MacKenzie Dern was getting walked down in that spot. I think her working with Jason Perillo has improved her game. I think that her, aggression that we saw in the last fight, in particularly the ground and pound phases, was important. But I also thought that what we could see is a changing of the guard of sorts. We saw Marina Rodriguez get one over. We saw Yan Xiaonan get one over on MacKenzie Dern. But in both of those spots, it was very close. Dern, in almost all of her fights, has a near finish, has a almost finish opportunity, right? Tisha Torres, she almost got her with that Kimura lock. Marina Rodriguez, she had several near fight ending exchanges on the mat. Angela Hill, I thought she was as good as submitted via armbar in round 1, but the clock runs out on it. Yan Xiaonan had to survive really dangerous positions. I bet a heap on Yan Xiaonan in that fight. I thought she was going to be able to survive. But when I'm just looking at this fight, I think to myself, 2 girls that are trending in opposite directions. The pricing is not something where I feel bullish on getting involved in MacKenzie Dern minus 200, but I just don't like what I've seen from Andrade lately. I haven't liked the effort. I haven't liked the intensity. I haven't liked the preparation. I haven't liked a lot of things. So for me, I feel like MacKenzie Dern has been getting better. She's been making better decisions. She's been improving. She's been showing better quality and a better product, and she's younger. Whereas on the other side, I feel like Jessica Andrade may have shown her best in the UFC. She's done it at 35, 25, whatever. She's got the OnlyFans. She's got 10 other things going on, it feels like. So I just don't know how seriously Jessica Andrade takes this game anymore. I will do more research, more due diligence. I respect her game. I respect all the money she's made me, but I've also made a lot of money fading this woman. And if there's another great opportunity, I'm not going to miss it. So that's something that I'm thinking about here. I'm going to wait and see what happens with this line movement, but normally you're seeing Jessica Andrade as a favorite in her fights, sometimes a significant favorite. So to see her as an underdog here, I'm sure it's going to tempt a lot of people. I do think it's an interesting fight and an interesting price, but my gut just says MacKenzie Dern probably finds a way to get this done. I've seen a lot of compromised positions from Jessica Andrade where she's nearly submitted. And I just think that if somebody was going to get it done via submission in this fight, have to think it is one of the most prolific submission threats in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu women's history, MacKenzie Dern. So give me MacKenzie Dern. Next up, guys, we are back to the main card. We've got Pat Sabatini taking on Diego Lopes, and we got to cheers to this one. A little bit of coffee here. Pat Sabatini, guys, Project Pat, fun fighter, very good skills, well-rounded. But I must say, some of the losses he's taken in his career have given me some pause and some concern. The Damon Jackson knockout loss, he got hit badly early. He got beat positionally in the grappling as a result of that. So that was unfortunate there. James Gonzalez lists as a TKO via arm injury. If you guys have ever watched that fight, he gets his arm broken, just plain and simple. It was an armbar type scenario, overhook type armbar, and got his shit broken. It was a really scary looking arm break. Not a great visual, unfortunately. And he's got some good wins along the way. Don't get me wrong. But I just think, there's some concerns that I have on the Pat Sabatini side. Let's talk about it. He beats in the UFC Tristan Connolly. Okay. Tristan Connolly really struggled in the UFC. Just really struggled with the physicality, especially of most UFC level opponents. He has a win over Michel Pereira and basically nobody else. Tucker Lutz. That was a good win. Shut him down there. I actually bet Tucker Lutz there. Completely foolish bet by me. And so I got to give him just clap and respect. That was a great win by him. TJ Laramie, another undersized guy, not a very big featherweight at all, but a guy who can grapple and who can move and who could scramble and who came in really good shape for that fight. So again, hats off to him, but a lot of decisions. He gets the heel hook over Jamall Emmers, who's also fighting on this card. But guys, if you remember that fight, Jamall Emmers comes out there, drops him with an uppercut, knocks him down, and then just gets into like the most idiotic toe hold exchange I could ever describe to you, where Pat Sabatini then rips his knee apart with a heel hook. It was just not a good decision tree, right? Then he goes out there and he submits Lucas Almeida his last time out. So a good win for our guy Pat Sabatini last time out. But Diego Lopes on the other side of things, he is the younger fighter in this spot. He does have more professional experience here, 28 professional fights coming in. And this is a guy who I bet at plus 620 against Movsar Evloev. It wasn't a huge bet by me, but it was a speculative investment. I just said to myself, this guy brings a really high pace. He's got very aggressive jiu-jitsu off his back, and this other guy's going to try and press him in that range. He's going to try and take him down. He's going to try and get on top of him. And I was like, this guy, Diego Lopes, is more than happy to play off his back. Now, playing off your back is not a, minus 500 skill set in MMA. It almost never is, right? But it is a skill set that you can make the life of a primary top player much more difficult if they're nervous, if they have to be worried about your submission attempts. Like I mentioned before, Pat Sabatini has had his arm broken before in competition, in mixed martial arts competition. So I think that that's a cause for concern against an armbar threat like Diego Lopes. If we go to his record, triangle armbar win versus Gavin Tucker, win via punches in Lux Fight League, against Angel Rodriguez, armbar in overtime against Jim Ehlers in EBI, armbar against Masio Fullen in Lux Fight League, knee bar, armbar, triangle choke, heel hook. It's like this guy has a lot of wins on his record by arm locks and arm attacks. He's a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu primary specialist. So I think we've got two guys who are both Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu aces, right? I think that on the one hand, we've got a guy in Pat Sabatini who should have the clear strength and wrestling advantage. Pat Sabatini is a beast. He is kind of like a Movsar Evloev in that way. He's going to be strong. He's going to get on top of a lot of guys. He's going to take down almost everybody. Let me pull up UFC stats, so I'm not talking out of my tuchus here, but I believe Pat Sabatini has taken down every UFC opponent. So he took down Tristan Connolly once. He did not take down Jamall Emmers. Technically, Jamall Emmers knocked him down and then submitted himself. He took down Tucker Lutz 5 times. He took down TJ Laramie 6 times. He was knocked out instantly by Damon Jackson, so I forgot about that as well. The only takedown of the fight went to Damon Jackson. And then he got 2 takedowns against Lucas Almeida. So more often than not, this guy is going to get takedowns in his fights. But, let's look at the significant strike totals. 26 strikes to 19, Sabatini against Connolly. 1 strike to 10, Sabatini against Emmers. 16 strikes to 17, Sabatini against Lutz. 36, and I'm talking significant strikes, of course. 36 to 15 against Laramie. 1 to 11 against Jackson, and then 27 for Sabatini compared to just 2 for Almeida last time out. So last time out, he put on a really impressive performance, no doubt about it. Pat is a member of the Renzo Gracie Philly team. I think it's Martinez BJJ. I'd have to double check, though. There's a couple really good gyms in the Philly area. I don't want to misattribute his success there, but he's definitely in one of the primary gyms in Philly. He's definitely in a very good jiu-jitsu environment. So no disrespect at all to Pat Sabatini. I think he's a beast. but we've seen him hurt. We've seen him in compromised jiu-jitsu positions as well. I think this is probably the most dangerous guy he's faced. So for me, I think that Pat Sabatini has a more clear path to looking minus 500 in this fight, right? If he gets on top, if he grinds out top position, like a Mark Diakese, right? It's kind of a similar archetype in some ways. But I also think that like Mark Diakese, Pat is not above making the occasional mistake. He's not above making a mistake that could be fatal for the fight, that could cost him the fight in an instant. So I would not be surprised if Lopes touched him on the chin in this spot. I do think he's dangerous everywhere. I do think he's aggressive in all positions. I also would not be surprised if, Lopes is able to submit Pat Sabatini, and I don't say that, bullishly, because again, Movsar Evloev survived those positions, but he was in a lot of dicey ones. He looked like he was in really dangerous spots. And I just don't know if you can put on a fight where 10 to 15 minutes worth is going to be you trying to take somebody down and get into dominant top control when they are perfectly happy to look for submissions, to attack off their back with elbows and everything else. I just can't envision a very comfortable win for Pat Sabatini here that doesn't involve, Lopes just underperforming in some way, because even in fights where he's held down, he's typically very active off his back with strikes and grappling. So really, really interesting stuff. Shout out to Prediction Shark, says, my brother and teacher from Long Island, your student from Valley Stream, thanks you for the endless knowledge and viewpoints. My man, I'm down here in Southern New York, but I do appreciate you big time, brother. Liam, Pat left Philly before last camp. Lou Betcha confirmed. Oh, that's very interesting. That's very interesting. I'm curious. Size matters in grappler versus grappler. I totally agree. Human Meta Project. Isn't Pat, former Gracie BJJ, very interesting? Let me check something out here, because Pat Sabatini, he is going to be 5 years older in this spot. He's going to be 3 inches shorter, and he's going to be at a 2.5-inch reach disadvantage. Yeah, I don't like any of that for Pat. I'll tell you the truth. And if I bet Tucker Lutz, then I might be tempted to bet Diego Lopes. I think Diego Lopes is only better at everything than Tucker Lutz. So let's see. Let's find out. But I think either way, I'll be happy to see whoever wins this fight, because I think both guys deserve a step up in competition. I think both guys interesting featherweights. But I just truly think that Diego Lopes is a guy that UFC wants to kind of get behind. He's in the corner for a lot of these Mexican women. He's helping to develop Mexican MMA. And on top of that, he's a very aggressive fighter. He really goes out there to put on a show. And I think that he's got an opportunity to do that here. So Northeast represent, Northeast shoot box, I think is what my guy Ozzy P says. So shout out to the Northeast shoot box. But I definitely think that this is a tough fight. And Diego Lopes, nobody I want to be fading at chalk personally. Next up, guys, the talk of the town. Let me pull up my Bet MMA here because I don't think that I have missed on a Benoit Saint-Denis fight yet. Let's see here. We are 3 for 3 on Benoit Saint-Denis. I had easy dose, 4.3 units at minus 215. I had half a unit on Benoit Saint-Denis plus 250 against Ismael Bonfim. And I had 1.13 units on Benoit Saint-Denis against Thiago Moises last time out. Haven't lost a bet on this guy yet. Absolutely love this guy. Love what he brings to the table. Love his style. And without tooting my own horn, I felt like I got the dynamic for his last fight perfect. A lot of people, a lot of sharp people as well, told me that they did not think that he was going to be able to deal with a guy who's as technical and skilled as Moises. But what I said was, this guy Benoit Saint-Denis, he's not a normal guy. I bet money against him, and I almost shit my pants with Elizeu Zaleski, because y'all just saw what Zaleski can do. Even at this age, even with all the stuff going on against the hype job or not, he went out there and he put on a heck of a show. He went out and put on a heck of a fight. And I thought that he showed that Renat, good fighter, but not head and shoulders above, and I just think that when you look at a guy, like this in Benoit Saint-Denis, the beating he was willing to take, the damage he was willing to incur, and the ability to recover and continue to throw and come back and then start to put the pressure late in that fight. He's just an insane physical athlete, a specimen. And when you talk about why do I like a guy like Benoit Saint-Denis just as like a broad archetype of fighter, it's because when I know that you will give everything in the octagon. You will not quit on me at all. You will rather, death before dishonor, right? That is like the cliche fighting saying, but that is like Benoit Saint-Denis, death before dishonor, dude. This guy was not willing to go down. He would rather do a quick sprint lap around the octagon to face you again because he just wants to fight. So with all that being said, I'm a Matt Frevola guy too. I like Matt Frevola. I think very highly of the guy. Let's go back and pull it up. I bet the under in the Frevola and Genaro Valdez fight. I bet Frevola by sub against Terrence McKinney and against Drew Dober. So I have been on the side of like, man, this guy Matt Frevola is underrated. If you guys remember, I go back in the day, I talked about this guy easily outgrappled Jalen Turner. Nobody talks about it. Nobody says that like he's really quality on the mat and he's got these takedowns. He's got this wrestling upside. But then I think about this fight, right? And everything is about matchups. It's always about this guy against this guy at this time. And let's look at the intangibles here. Let's look at some of the things that don't change with the weather, right? We got 33-year-old Matt Frevola taking on 27-year-old Benoit Saint-Denis. So the much younger fighter here is Benoit Saint-Denis. We talk about sometimes an angle I look for on this show, the younger guy with more experience. They've got very comparable levels of experience here, maybe not quite at that UFC level, but certainly overall in MMA, very similar levels of experience. And a lot of the competitions for Benoit Saint-Denis have been as high as 170 pounds, including that loss against Elysée Zaleski dos Santos, his only one of his career at 170 pounds. On the other side of things, guys, Matt Frevola has multiple losses via finish in the UFC. He was knocked out in round one by Terrence McKinney. He was knocked out in round one by another gentleman. I'm drawing a blank on his name. I just pulled it up. Polo Reyes. He was easily out-wrestled by Arman Sarukian for large segments of that fight en route to a unanimous decision loss. So there have been several guys who were able to get the jump, unfortunately, on Matt Frevola in the UFC. Now, he's put together an admirable win streak. Drew Dober knocked him out. Basically, the first guy to do so. Really impressive stuff. Atman Azaitar put him down. One for the culture, one for the boys at Madison Square Garden, I believe, as an underdog. Absolutely exceptional stuff. Awesome win for our guy Frevola there. Beat Genaro Valdez. Back and forth war, but multiple knockdowns. Really awesome stuff. So a lot of good signs there for Matt Frevola. But the split decision win over Luis Pena, the draw against Lando Venata, the knockdowns in many of these fights all lead me to think that while he is very talented and while he's got skills in each and every one of these positions, I do worry a little bit about the durability of Matt Frevola. I do think that Matt Frevola is a guy that sometimes gets drawn into a brawl, that sometimes gets drawn into throwing hands in the pocket, maybe not taking the path of least resistance. Sometimes his corner's yelling at him, Matt, go for the takedowns. What did I tell you guys about all these submission tickets that I've been burning because the guy's out there standing and banging and throwing down in the pocket? And I love Matt Frevola. But when you stand and bang in the pocket, guys like Terrence McKinney, who he is head and shoulders better than in MMA, will beat you from time to time, right? If you're going to invite risk, if you're going to fight a volatile style, you're going to invite more people to beat you. You're going to have more up and down results. And I do think that Matt Frevola's got skills everywhere. He's getting better on the feet too. But I just think that this is the kind of spot where both guys are live, so am I endorsing minus 200 Benoit Saint-Denis? Maybe not. I think that Benoit Saint-Denis, great fighter, but look at the prices that I bet him at. I bet him at plus 250. I bet him at minus 113. I haven't bet him at minus 200, because it's a little bit harder to get there. But I am just saying, I got to shout out Glimbot here. Great call. He says, Liam, is the New York boy going to teach BSD how to wrestle once again? That would be cool. It would be awesome. It's in New York. That would be something special. But I also think that Benoit Saint-Denis is a special guy, and I just have to level with you guys. The UFC doesn't always talk about guys like they want to move them up the card and they want to promote them and all these things, right? I think that they want to promote Benoit Saint-Denis if they can, and he's got to deliver. He's got to do his end of the deal, but they're putting him in a big fight card, on a big card, on a UFC main card. They're trying to get this guy more exposure, in my view. and they're trying to give Frevola a winnable fight, a fun fight, fight of the night type of scrap. And they're trying to give Benoit Saint-Denis a winnable fight, fight of the night, that kind of scrap that can make you a household name, that can make you a little bit more known to UFC fans. John Anik talks about Benoit Saint-Denis, potential future UFC title challenger, potential future UFC contender. He's still very young. Frevola, he's a guy that's paid a lot of dues. He's been around. He's gotten a lot of wins. He's gotten better at his craft. But we've also seen that Frevola can be chin checked. And it's happened to him in the UFC. 4-2 career to the knockout. Never been submitted, though. 3-0 career to the sub. A lot of Benoit Saint-Denis wins have come by way of submission. I would be very surprised if he submitted Matt Frevola. I think that if he is going to win this fight, he's got to do it by knockout or decision more often than not. I think that on the other side of things, Frevola would be wise to try and test the grappling of Benoit Saint-Denis, try and test the wrestling, try and test that cardio and see how it holds up in a pure wrestling grappling match. But I do just think to myself, Benoit Saint-Denis, I think he's got the better hardware. I think he's a little bit bigger and a little bit stronger. I think he's got the better durability. So I ultimately have to favor the God of War, Benoit Saint-Denis. I think it's going to be a hell of a fight. I think they're both getting $50,000. But I just have a feeling that James hit this one on the head here. Love both these guys. Got a bad feeling Frevola will get cracked being too ballsy in the pocket. I kind of agree. I think that Benoit, you could say the same thing. I just think he takes a shot a little bit better because he's a little bit younger. So we'll have to see. We'll have to see. It's a really fascinating fight. But either way, I'm loving it. If the New York boy teaches him how to wrestle, we got to claim that. But I got to call it like I see it, guys. And I do think, I put Benoit Saint-Denis one ever so slight tier above Matt Frevola right now in my theoretical lightweight rankings, but that could all change on Saturday night. And I've been a big Frevola guy for a long time. So not looking to lay -200 chalk against him. I've advocated in the past people not to do that and to take Frevola or to pass on his fights, dog or pass type situations. But now I'm just looking at it like Frevola opened, I think, plus 330 in this spot. I think odds makers opened up in Saint-Denis around -400. It's come all the way down. And I get that because I think both these guys are willing to put on a show, willing to put on a very entertaining scrap. But I just think on hardware, I would favor Benoit Saint-Denis here, if ever so slightly. Next up, guys, we've got the prelim headliner, and it's a banger. We got Joshua Van taking on Kevin Borjas. And Joshua Van is a guy that I bet in his last fight. He got the W, got a split decision victory over Zalga ZZ Top in that UFC debut. And this guy's fun. He's got good finishing instincts on the regional scene. He's got some wins by knockout, some wins by submission. So he's willing to go out there and mix it up. He's been submitted in Fury FC back in 2021. So he's not a world beater. He's not a guy that's, impossible to get one over on. That was by 0-0 Devin and Jackson, who's now a 3-1 professional MMA fighter. But still, he's a guy who stayed very active since that loss in 2021. He's rattled off 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 straight wins coming into this fight with Kevin Borjas. Now, Borjas is a guy that really impressed me. Came out there as a big underdog, got the unanimous decision victory over Victor Diaz on the Contender Series. And prior to doing so, his only loss as a professional, also by submission. That was back in 2019. He has not been quite as active here as Joshua Van, but here's what's an interesting quirk. Joshua Van was supposed to fight Kevin Borjas on the Contender Series, and then he ended up getting signed to step up on short notice against Zalgas. So then Joshua Van was supposed to fight Rickson Zendim. He ends up settling to fight Victor Diaz, And Victor Diaz, if you guys remember, was, I believe, a training partner of Pantoja. I think he came in with some hype and some acclaim, one of the bigger favorites on the card. He was able to get the upset victory there. So I don't know as much about these guys' games. They're young. They're guys that come in from Contender Series, but it looks like everybody's piling on the Joshua Van side of things. And, I'm not really sure why that is. He's 22 years of age. He's done a great job so far. But what do we know about 22-year-olds? They're not done growing physically. 22-year-olds can continue to grow physically until they're 25 years of age, as males. Shout out to my guy, Marcel, one of the original homies as well. Shout out to everybody rocking with us in the chat. 43 people rocking with us as we just begin to discuss this prelim portion of the event. And I think that Joshua Van has a bright future. I think he wins many more UFC fights, but split decision with August Zumagulov doesn't tell me that you're, a world beater. Doesn't tell me you're going to go out there and every time get the win. And I do think that we've seen Peruvian MMA on the rise. We've seen these guys go out there and perform above expectations, go out there, put it on the line. So I think Joshua Van, interesting skill set, but last time out, he's a plus 180. This time out, he's a minus 250. Big change of direction here from the market. So I'm going to do a little more due diligence on this fight. But certainly looks to me like a little bit of aggressive pricing on two very inexperienced guys, less than 10 fights combined apiece. So, yeah, it just seems like a fun fight, competitive scrap, but I'm not sure that I'm selling Borjas down the river yet, like a lot of the market wants to. Let's just look at some of the intangibles here. Borjas going to be 25 years of age, same height, 3-inch reach advantage. I mean, what about that screams minus 250 to everybody? I'm not sure. So I'll have to dig into the tape and see exactly where we come up with these lines, because that does seem a little aggressive to me. Take a sip of the old coffee. Forgot the odds mug today, but needed the coffee to get through. So here we are. Next up, we've got a fun scrap here, guys. We got Jared Flash Gordon, New York's own, taking on Mark O. Madsen, the Olympian, 39 years of age. Denmark just put on, guys, Nicholas Dalby. You guys remember? Oh, my God. No way. Our guy Marcel, far, far too kind. Absolute cheers to you. What a gem of a human being. Thank you, Marcel. Huge blessings, my brother. This guy, Marcel, crushes in the boxing department on a week-to-week basis, always dropping gems in this chat. So I say it each and every week, sharpest chat in the game. And there's our guy, Marcel, with the huge $100 dono. I think that's the biggest dono ever in the history of the show. So a special thanks to you, Marcel. My hat comes off to you, my brother. Thank you so much. And that just warms my heart, brother. Thank you. Wow. Where are we at, guys? We're at Jared Gordon and Marco Madsen. We got hella more fights to talk about. We got beautiful betting opportunities all around. But shout out to the great people in the chat that make it worth it. What an absolute blessing. Let's get back on track here if we can. Refocus, and we got the Renzo Gracie product, right? We got Renzo Gracie's own Jared Gordon back in the building, of course. Absolutely a blessing. And we've got Marco Madsen, fight ready. He has definitely shown improvements over the course of his UFC run, but at 39 years of age, hard to imagine he's got that much more growth left, and he's got that much left to give. He's on his second career in combat. He's a guy that made the Olympic championships, I believe, certainly the world championship level in Greco-Roman wrestling. So very good wrestling credentials, but sometimes people wonder, why is he getting taken down in some of these fights? Why is he not able to, prevent the submission from Grant Dawson? Well, I could tell you guys, it's because he's not a traditional wrestler, like a American style wrestler. He ain't wrestling with us boys over in Section 9, where we're getting down with leg attacks, where we're trying to hold people down, where we're trying to control people on the mat. I always say folk style wrestling is a different thing. We're trying to control. That's why we talk about rides. That's why we talk about pinning people to the floor. Whereas freestyle wrestling, Greco-Roman wrestling, a lot of times is about offense, big throws, big takedowns, big attacks, but maybe not holding somebody down for a pin. Maybe not controlling somebody for a longer period of time. Maybe a little bit more explosive bursts, but not that continual effort. That 15-minute, that grinding pace, scrambles, all these kind of things that classify American folk style wrestling. And so I think that Marco Madsen is getting better at some of those things. Beat Vince Pichel, a pretty tough guy to grind out, beat Clay Guida in a split decision fight that mostly played out on the feet, but again, was able to prevent his wrestling there. Austin Hubbard, kind of a classic get out wrestled kind of guy. TKO Danilo Belluardo, who I don't know that anybody's ever been heard from since, so we wish him the best, but Danilo Belluardo, not really the best guy. Oh, wow. Interesting note from Glenbot says, I heard Mark moved back to Denmark, not at Fight Ready anymore. If that's true, I think that's a big deal. What I will say, though, is shout out to Denmark, right? And shout out to Marcel one last time, because Nicholas Dalby, that plus 450 hitting easily, was all the credit of Denmark's toughness and durability. Shout out to my guy, Uncle Wheezy, as well. Always says Denmark produces tough individuals. Marco Madsen, definitely very tough. Looking at his resume right here, no losses via TKO, only loss coming via way of submission last time out against Grant Dawson. Dawson got fraud checked a little bit last time out as well, by Bobby Green, got knocked out in that fight in the very early going. So I look at this spot as a Jared Gordon potential bounce back opportunity. I don't think many people believe in Jared, in the UFC for whatever reason, but I thought he could have easily beat Paddy Pimblett. I thought it was a very close fight. Could have went either way. You look at that fight, loses a unanimous decision. There was a lot of controversy, a lot of uproar about that one. The clash of heads against Bobby Green is marginally concerning, but he has taken off a pretty sufficient amount of time, I would reckon, about 7 months of time out of the octagon to recover from that clash of heads. And you look in the past, he got submitted by Grant Dawson in the third round in a back and forth fight where Grant Dawson just really worked very hard and spent himself looking for that third round finish. I was surprised he got it, but I was impressed. He's a big guy, and Jared Gordon is a guy who's kind of a tweener, right? A little bit between 45 and 55. But you look back, Joe Selecki, Joe Gracie, guy whose cardio didn't necessarily check out, and I bet plus 126 in that spot, multiple units on Jared Gordon, cashed the ticket there. He beat Chris Fishgold, beat Danny Chavez, just outworked these guys to a decision. So is Jared Gordon the most devastating guy? No. The reason they put him in there with Paddy Pimblett is because he doesn't normally bust a grape. He doesn't normally finish people, but he can typically outwork people, outgrind people, win a close competitive decision, land a little bit more shots on the feet. So I do think that my guy Dixon is making a valid point here. Gordon late or Gordon decision is how I would look at this. He's had older opponents before that were gassed in front of him and he didn't get the finish. Jared's just really not a very violent guy. I think that Jared would prefer to be in another walk of life, but he just does this because it's how he has his platform. It's how he shares his story. He's a New York guy, New York's own, one of New York's favorite sons. So just like our guy, Matt Frevola, going to be rooting for my guy, Jared Gordon, New York's own, Renzo Gracie's own, to get the job done in what should be a close fight, competitive fight. But I think late on, when it comes down to heart, cardio, and who wants it better, I'll take Jared Gordon in that kind of spot any day. So give me Jared Gordon. The younger guy with more experience as well. Checking that box, baby. Let's go. Next up, guys, we've got Dennis Buzujka taking on Jamall Emmers. Fun scrap here at 145 pounds. And listen, guys, I don't think either one of these guys is a future title challenger at 145 pounds. I don't think either one of these guys is, the next big thing in the weight class, but one of them's minus 300, minus 275, and the other one is plus 2XX. And for me, that just makes it a pretty clear click on the Dennis Buzujka side or passing on this fight for me. Now, your mileage may vary, right? I know that Jamall Emmers has a contingency out there, especially in the MMA betting community. He definitely has gone out there and produced a little bit recently. Got that Hussein Askabov win. I think a lot of people were impressed by that. I do think a lot of people feel the same way as my guy Dixon. They think Emmers deserved the win against Farjak Jenkins. He didn't get it, right? Jenkins gets the win there. So I think that left, maybe a sour taste in some people's mouth. Maybe that makes people think, they should be even more bullish on Jenkins. He should be on more bullish on Emmers. He should be on a 2-fight win streak, right? But let's just go back and evaluate his UFC career fight by fight, okay? Jamall Emmers, minus 255 against Julian Erosa, gets KO2. So he loses the fight via knockout in the second round against Julian Erosa on Contender Series. Okay. Then he gets the call up to the UFC. That was all the way back in June of 2018. Gets the call up to the UFC in March of 2020. Giga Chikadze, split decision lost on UFC 248. So Emmers basically remembered that he was able to wrestle in the third round, right? So he's going against the kickboxer and he decides not to wrestle until round 3. I thought it could have easily been a fight for him, but again, it's a fight where Jamall Emmers goes out there. He's a minus 170 favorite. He's expected to win the fight. He's got a clear path to victory. He's got all the skills that you'd think he needs. Doesn't win the fight. Okay, no problem. So next fight out, we look at Jamall Emmers. He gets the win against Vince Cachero. Could y'all pick Vince Cachero out of a lineup? All right. Next up, we've got Pat Sabatini. Pat Sabatini on this fight card, right? We discussed Pat before. He's got skills, but he's not a world beater. He's not somebody that's undefeated or something. He's got up and down results. Good fighter for sure. But what happened in that fight? Jamall Emmers goes out there and as a minus 135 favorite, gets a knockdown in the early going, and then instantly gets into a grappling exchange with Pat Sabatini, which you'd think that's his only path to victory. And then he gets submitted instantly and gets his knee completely torn apart. So he's out for a while, right? He comes back from the Sabatini fight 2 years later. It was August 2021. He comes back in February of 2023 and beats Hussein Askabov, okay? Now let's go back and look at Hussein Askabov and find out exactly what he was arrested for, okay? So Hussein Askabov arrested in Thailand, so the UFC had to cancel his bout. He's gone, okay? He's fired. He's gone from the UFC. He beat a fraud in a 3-round split decision, and we wish him the best for that. Now, when I look at the Jack Jenkins fight, that showed me a little bit that if it's a fight that's within the margin and they can rob Jamall Emmers, they will try to rob Jamall Emmers, okay? He's 1-4 as a favorite in the UFC for a negative 75.6% ROI. I just can't ever bet on that guy as a favorite. I can't. The data says I shouldn't. And I look at the matchup and I say to myself, all right, is Dennis Buzujka the worst fighter in the world? Because that's what I would need him to be. And I don't think Dennis Buzujka is the second coming. I don't think he is a great fighter, but I do think that he's a functional, serviceable featherweight. I think he's about average, right? I think that his ceiling in the UFC is not that high, but Jamall Emmers is 34. He's a featherweight, okay? He's one of the older guys in the division. He's not a young guy. So you look at where he's going to be competing. Last time out, Sean Woodson against Dennis Buzujka. Sean Woodson's 31 years of age, right? Dennis Buzujka is 25 years of age. He takes the fight on very short notice. He's at an 8-inch reach disadvantage. And I'm looking at it just saying to myself, like, I think Buzujka was live in the spot. I've never really been a big Woodson guy. And Buzujka underperformed in that spot, no doubt about it. But then I listened to his interviews, and he said, listen, I cut 25 pounds, and I felt like death in the first round. So I do think that, a guy like Buzujka, I'll cut him a little bit of slack. Because here's why. If he just said that, talk is cheap, right? But if you guys go back and watch, I thought he looked much better and more competitive and much more honest in the Melsik Bagdasaryan fight. And Melsik Bagdasaryan is a scary guy. Like Melsik's trying to kick your head off. He's trying to beat you up. He's really trying to get after you. And I felt like that was a fight where Dennis went out there and had a competitive second round. He was sick and still went out there and competed with the guy and made it a much more honest affair. So I definitely think that Dennis is not the best finisher. He's not the most dangerous guy. But I think that in a fight like this, where he's much more prepared, where he's got the date well in advance, I think he's going to have the support of the local crowd. I think if somebody is to get a robbery decision in this fight, it's more likely to be Dennis Buzujka. I think there's just a lot more reasons to like that side for me. So it's a dog or pass situation as far as I'm concerned. Shout out to Ricci, mentioned it on our show last week. Hope that some people took advantage of the pricing. I know it's changed since then, but I think that do your own independent research always and see what you believe. But I just can't get to Emmers in this spot. I think that Buzujka is a guy that will be a future fade, but I think this is a time to bet on him. He was a smaller underdog last time to Woodson, and I thought that was a tougher fight with more difficult contextual circumstances. So with that being said, we can move along to the next fight on the card, guys, where Nazim Sadykhov is taking on Viacheslav Borschev. And this is a fight where Viacheslav Borschev is, a knockout power type of guy, but his wrestling, his grappling has certainly left a lot to be desired. Last time out, got the big win via knockout over Mahashate. And we also saw that Mike Davis, Mark Diakese, those fights, he was able to get out wrestled. He was able to get taken down. He was able to get beat up for those portions of the fight. Dakota Bush, a little bit lower level, was able to take him out with the body shot in that spot. Chris Duncan, that was a really nice win for him, especially at the time. I don't think people expected it. I bet Slava in that spot. And then I tried to fade Chris Duncan again with New York's own Charlie Campbell, and we all know how that ended up. So I think that Viacheslav Borschev is a fine fighter, but he's still got a lot to put together. He's 31 years of age, according to Tapology, taking on Nazim Sadykhov, 29 years old. The Black Wolf is now 2-0 in the UFC with a win via rear naked choke against Terrence McKinney. McKinney kind of just gave up in that fight. He had the back early. He had good shots, but he has since been, kind of exposed a little bit for not having the best cardio. So Nazim Sadykhov took advantage of that. Evan Elder, that fight was very competitive. I thought Evan Elder had a decent chance to win that fight. And unfortunately, cut stoppage. So super close, super competitive. But I did think that I've seen Nazim Sadykhov improve, in my opinion, over the course of his tape. I think he showed better composure, patience in the grappling compared to the McKinney fight from his early fights. I've heard bad things about him in the room in terms of his wrestling and his grappling way back in the day from the Cerro Longa room. And since then, again, I think he's made significant improvements. I think he's committed to improving his wrestling and his grappling. Now 2-0 inside the organization. And he got the win on Contender Series via finish as well. So 3 finishes now in as many UFC opportunities and 2-0 in the big show itself. So now they're giving him a big opportunity, guys. Brooklyn, New York's own, taking on a opponent in Viacheslav Borschev, who's coming in from California, team alpha male guy, also of Russian extraction. So should be a fun scrap here, but I have to think that the UFC put this together to try and get a win for Sadykhov, but I don't think it's going to be that easy. On the feet, this is a very honest scrap. These guys have a very similar build in terms of their height and their reach. Let's look at how the stats project in this fight. Haven't checked that yet. So we've got very similar stats here as well. Nazim Sadykhov landing just a touch less, getting hit just a touch more. Same defense percentage, just a little less accurate with his striking, but he is a southpaw. I'm curious how Slava has looked against southpaws in the past. JWB, our guy Rich, is saying Nazim won't wrestle. If he is not going to wrestle, then it is going to be a violent fight that could end very poorly for him. Azerbaijan, stand up. He is a Azerbaijani, and I do think that he's going to try and put on for his people, put on for New York, but Tapology votes way in favor of Sadykhov, and I do think that's a touch disrespectful of our guy Slava Borschev, who has proven that he's got knockout power in this UFC division. Chris Duncan, durable guy, knocked him out. Higher Mahashate looks like a pretty durable guy, knocked him out. So I think that Slava, he's shown at various points. Hedge fund, shout out to MMA hedge funds in the comments, says I do expect improvements for Slava in the takedown defense and the get up game. And shout out to Dixon, says the Longo split decision parlay, Nazim and Buzujka both win by split. Very interesting. So yeah, I definitely think Slava prone to giving up takedowns, but there's been times like the fight with Kenley St. Louis where he showed good scrambles, good get-ups. It's just that some other fights, like the Mark Diakese fight, he just kind of stopped and started phoning it in a little bit and kind of conceding bad positions. So those are things I don't like to see. I don't even know what the odds are on this fight, guys. I haven't looked at the odds for every fight on the card. So let me pull up bestfightodds.com. And Slava Borschev is sitting at about plus 120 across the board right now. Nazim Sadykhov around a minus 130 best available, minus 150 across the board. So I agree that eventually he will accept it, but I just want to make sure that my guy Nazim Sadykhov is saying in interviews, I'm coming out here, I'm shooting takedowns, I'm getting on top of this guy, because I do think that there's some cause for concern. I think Slava, while he could be trying to make improvements in the wrestling and grappling, I just haven't seen it yet on a fundamental level. And I don't think Mahashate was the guy to test that, frankly. Next up, guys, we got a fascinating fight here between two women. Tabatha Ricci taking on Lupita Godinez, and Baby Shark against Lupi. Fun fight here. And I think that we've got a really compelling matchup on our hands. We've got Mexican wrestling against Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. And, I like Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. I love what it has to offer, but I do worry that Lupi Godinez could have the physicality edge in this matchup, guys. You look at Lupi Godinez on paper, and she's a girl that's very physically strong. When I look back, Ariane Carnolosi, kind of a muscle hamster, easily beat her up. Lomo Lukbunmi, a girl that's very powerful Thai fighter, small, undersized, but very powerful nonetheless, was able to beat her up. Luana Carolina, up a weight class on short notice, wasn't able to get the job done there. But she did take her down in the early going, kind of just spent her cardio too fast in that fight, in my view. Got many takedowns early, couldn't get takedowns late. Luana Carolina, that fight aside, Silvana Gomez-Juarez, she finished her in the first round. That was a beautiful belly down armbar. I was convinced that she was going to get a belly down armbar against Elise Reed, but instead she got that rear naked choke in round 2. So she's been showing some good performances. Angela Hill, she lost that fight. Believe she came into that one with a hip injury, if my memory serves, and she took that one on short notice as well. 3 months turnaround from a Carnelossi fight earlier that year, but now she's on a 3-fight win streak, guys. Split decision win over Cynthia Calvillo, another Mexican wrestler, base, and then Emily Ducote and Elise Reed. So I think that broadly speaking, we've seen pretty good results from Lupi Godinez. She's 6-3 inside the octagon. She's still very young at 30 years of age, on the right side of 30, let's say. And I think that she's put together the right amount of experience. Vanessa Demopoulos, 5-round win on the regional scene prior. I think that the split decision loss against Panay, I could throw that one out. I thought that she looked more devastating there. So here's the other thing, though. Tabatha Ricci has been a quiet money train at points. I picked her, I believe, against Jillian Robertson. I don't think I bet her in that spot. She was able to go out there and get the win and the submission against Jessica Panay. That was an impressive showing for her as well. And I think that on top of that, Tabatha Ricci, the one that I love and the one that calls to mind for me is Tabatha Ricci. I bet her when she was able to go out there and easily defeat Polyana Viana. I thought that was a classic spot where Polyana Viana so willing to accept her back in that fight, but also Tabatha Ricci, the fight IQ to not get into the ground exchanges with her and just kick her in the legs, stand above her, and really just take the path of least resistance. If you wanted violence, if you had ITD props or sub, or you wanted entertainment, it was not there. But if you wanted a win, Tabatha Ricci did everything to go out there, fight smart, and get the win. But I do think there's been times when Tabatha Ricci has looked a little bit sketchy. I thought that the looks that she gave against Manon Fiorot weren't great, and I bet her in that fight. She was undersized. She was on short notice. I knew that there was a lot going against her, but I just really thought that she wasn't really showing what I wanted to see in terms of the level of resistance, in terms of her trying to get a hold of Manon Fiorot and keep a hold of her, push her against the fence. So overall, she was undersized there. I could forgive that. But then the fight against Maria Oliveira, thought that there could have been a little bit more offense from her in that spot. So I'm curious to see what developments she'll make in this fight, whether or not we'll see some big improvements from her. I do think she's got good skills everywhere, but a lot of times she needs to go the full 15 minutes to get the win, to get the decision. I do think Lupi Godinez has very powerful strikes on the feet. I don't think she's a pushover in the wrestling or the grappling in either of those phases. I don't think she's going to get easily taken down here. So this for me seems like a very fun, very scrappy fight. And yeah, I don't think that I can quite get to the Ricci side, but I'm going to do my due diligence here because the other thing is Ricci, I believe, is the younger fighter here. Yeah, she is a slightly younger fighter here. They both have a similar level of experience. I do think that they're both very physically strong, but a lot of people seem to be on the Ricci side here. And I just think that Lupita Godinez probably fought the better level of competition overall, probably tested herself a little bit more. And I think that UFC experience could come into play here. Again, 4-1 in the organization for Baby Shark compared to 6-3, a lot more seasoning for Lupi Godinez inside the organization. So give me Lupi here, but not with a supreme amount of confidence. And let's take it back to the prelims. We've got a 135-pound bout. Shout out to the 45 people rocking with us live, guys. I know Monday Night Football is on. I'll try and get you guys out of here as quickly as possible on these last two fights, but don't want to give any short shrift here to the fighters either. So Kyung Ho Kang, Mr. Perfect. He's a guy that competes very infrequently, but he's back once again to take on John Sexy Mexi Castaneda. And I bet John Castaneda before as an underdog. I've cashed in on him. I'm trying to think of what fight that was. Maybe Miles Johns. Let's pull up my previous results betting on his fights. And here we go. John Castaneda. So I bet Eddie Wineland for a small amount. That was a really square bet. He got crushed. But then I bet plus 195, beat the line by a significant amount on the Miles Johns play. And I also had the fight doesn't go the distance in that Wineland fight. So I got my money back at least. But in any case, I think that John Castaneda An interesting guy fighting out of the academy in Minnesota. 31 years of age. He's going to be 5 years younger than his South Korean counterpart here in Mr. Perfect. Mr. Perfect, though, is the bigger fighter here. He's going to have 2 inches of reach. He's going to be the taller fighter by 3 inches as well. And I think that Kang is a pretty difficult guy to look good against, broadly speaking. Let's just look at his UFC career. Lost to Hani Yaya, lost to Ricardo Ramos, and lost to Chico Camus. That's it. So he's lost 3 fights in the organization. He's 8-3-1 in the UFC with 1 no contest. And I talked about it last week. Why did I like Nicholas Dalby? He's 6-3-1 in the UFC. Why did I like Easy Dose? He's 10-3 in the UFC, and they're both at over, plus 300. It's like those are the kind of numbers where these guys are proven that they can go out there and win fights in the UFC, and they're kind of being disrespected a little bit. And I look at this, Kang, he's plus 125, and I'm not sure about all that. I certainly think that this is going to be a winnable fight for him. He's 5-6 in fights that go the distance. That's marginally concerning here because John Castaneda tends to be a pretty difficult guy to put away. He's got 2 losses via knockout. He's 6-4 career to the decision, so not much better for John Castaneda. Both guys pretty competitive when fights hit the scorecards. Certainly Castaneda a little bit better performances in that regard. But Kang, on the other hand, he's got 1 loss by sub, 12-1 career to the submission. He is 2-1 career to the knockout, and he submitted his last opponent, Christian Quinones, in the very first round. He beat Dana Bakary via unanimous decision. 2 fights I'm not sure a lot of people pegged him to win. He lost to Hani Yaya, but he's 12-1 career to the submission, and Hani Yaya is a world-class submission practitioner, not able to submit him in that fight, competitive and back and forth. But I do believe he got hurt in that fight, if my memory serves. He has a couple of finished wins in the UFC, a couple submissions. So I just think overall, Kang, not a super active guy, but this is his second fight in 2023. He's trying to stay more active. He's trying to stay competitive in there. And at 36 years of age, I don't know how bullish I feel on Kang, but I do think it's probably a dog or pass situation in my gut. So I'm going to do more due diligence. I'm going to do more research, but I liked Sexy Mexi when he was a plus 195 underdog, but now he's back entrenched as a favorite in this fight. And I think Kang has a lot to offer as well. So just going to do my due diligence before I get ahead of myself, but I think that's a very winnable fight. And look at how Muin Gafurov looked in his last fight. He got absolutely annihilated by Said Gafurov, and he had a somewhat competitive fight with John Castaneda, a little bit back and forth. So that doesn't really speak well to me either. Last but not least, guys, we got Steve Erceg taking on Alessandro Costa, and these are, guys that certainly are interesting fighters. I believe I picked Steve Erceg outright as an underdog last time out against David Dvorak. David Dvorak, ranked fighter. A lot of people, big fans of David Dvorak, but again, Erceg, 20% of the Tapology votes. People weren't expecting it. Came through, got the win in that spot. Now he's 1-0 inside the octagon, and he's entrenched as a favorite against Alessandro Costa, and Costa is 1-1 in the UFC. But guys, you got to remember, he lost to Amir Albazi. Amir Albazi, very quality fighter. Amir Albazi was able to walk him down, end up catching him with knockout blows in round 3. Did show some questionable cardio potentially in that spot, but I believe he took that one on short notice, guys. And he did go out there and dispatch of Jimmy Flick in his most recent opportunity. So I don't know what to make of Alessandro Costa. He's been knocked out twice in his career by Uriel Cosio back in 2016 and by Amir Albazi in 2022 in December. But I look at this spot and I just say to myself, interesting fight put together on short notice. I'm not sure how prepared Costa is for this date, but I do think that he's training with other quality UFC level fighters, and that's something I like to see. As for the Erceg side, Erceg out of Wilkes Martial Arts, he was supposed to fight Matt Schnell. Schnell withdrew from the bout. He had a scheduled bout with Clayton Carpenter as well, so they've been trying to get this guy out there. And I think that this is a fight where, the loss to Deniz Bandar back in 2019, he's a UFC level fighter, so I won't take too much away from that. Lost to Sean Gauchi. He's got wins over Shannon Ross and David Dvorak. Those are 2 technically UFC level fighters, but I do think Shannon Ross has a horrific chin, one of the worst I've ever seen in the history of MMA, especially at a professional level, no doubt about that. And I think that for David Dvorak, he's a guy that's kind of lost his confidence. He's lost a little bit of a step But Usyk showed he can go out there, he can put on a pace, he can, compete at a pretty fast pace. And that's where I think it's going to become a dangerous fight for a guy like Costa. I'm pulling up the UFC stats right now, and it does say that Costa is attempting more strikes. He's absorbing fewer strikes, and his striking accuracy is higher than Usyk. His defense higher than Usyk. But Usyk, 3 takedowns per 15 minutes, none for Costa, 66% takedown defense, 1 submission attempt per 15 minutes for Usyk. So very small sample sizes we're dealing with here, but I do think that this is kind of a clashing of styles here. Dixon, I hear your point, but I also believe that this is a fight that was put together on short notice. So I'm not sure that it had as much to do with that consideration as just trying to get a fight put together for Usyk, who was already supposed to fight. So for me, this is just about replacing Schnell with anybody that they can. But Schnell is almost a fighter that he's got skills, but he's got such bad hardware. I guess he's another guy that could have potentially been knocked out in this spot. But for me, I think the pace is ultimately what's going to make me lean Usyk. I think he's a tough guy to probably fight and beat on short notice. But shout out to Dixon, says Costa is about to pull a Bonfim. He can't do that. He's a short underdog here. You can only pull a Bonfim if you're a minus 600 favorite, but I do think that we have covered a lot of good ground here, guys. So what I want to do is, with the 4 minutes or so we have left until 9 p.m. Eastern, if you guys have any questions, comments, concerns that you want to get off your chest, then I encourage you to fire those off in the chat right now. If you don't get them off in the chat right now, no problem. You can always hit me up on social media. You can always fire off a comment below this video, and I'll try and answer as many of those as possible before fight time. What more can you expect from the channel this week? I'm glad that you asked. You can expect that Thursday, I'm coming back here later in the week with more research done, with more fight tape, more in-depth analysis, previews, predictions, and betting advice as well. And we're going to be doing that with a special guest. So stay tuned for Bets and Banter later in the week. What else do we have? Maybe on Friday, if we've got a little extra time, just like we did last week, we'll do a post-weigh-in live stream. Anything that we missed, anything that's changed based on the weigh-ins, all those kind of things, plus answering questions, interacting with the chat, making sure that everybody's ready to go for the big event, because it's UFC 295. It's a huge fight week, and I wouldn't want to do it any other way than with the best chat in the game. So shout out to everybody who's been rocking with us. I'm guessing that we're going to be doing Thursday at 3 p.m., but stay tuned always. What I say, the best way to make sure you never miss when we're live, hit that notification bell, guys, because I do change up the timing just a little bit, but it's never to try and mess with you guys. It's always just to try and get the best quality product out that I possibly can. And sometimes that takes a little bit of working with other people's schedules, of adjusting my own schedule to make sure that we can put out a quality program and to get all the research done on time. So shout out to everybody for the support. Want to say, if you haven't already, drop a like on this video, get subscribed to the channel, because we're talking about fights like this each and every week. So now let's turn it back to the chat real quick, and let's deal with all these questions. Our guy Dixon says, serious question, Liam, from your expert analysis, did it look like Jailton was actually trying to finish the subs? I'm hearing he took a bribe to go to decision. Odds were plus 1,000. People in Brazil cashed big time. Listen, man, number one, I was at a wedding. I missed the main event, so I have to go back and rewatch that. What I will say is it's hard to submit guys like Derek Lewis. I do think that we saw him kind of quit and give up against Sergei Spivak after being mat returned a number of times. One of the reasons I didn't get to any bets on Jailton Almeida this week is I did think Derek Lewis looked to be taking his training seriously. He looked to be in somewhat good shape for this fight. It looked like he kind of wanted to save his career. And I think that a guy like Derek Lewis went out there and probably put on a good effort. Now, does that mean I don't think Jailton Almeida should have been able to finish him? I mean, frankly, Jailton Almeida should have probably been able to grab his wrist and punch him in the face 50 times in the first round if he was mounting him a minute in, like is what I heard. So I will go back and I will rewatch. And then I will give you a more informed opinion. But what I will say is, hey, if Jailton Almeida saw that it was plus 3,300 to go get a decision and he just wanted to take the money, I can't really blame him, honestly. Fighters don't get paid enough, so do whatever you got to do. But it also was just a little disappointing. I do think that it kind of brings his stock down within that heavyweight division. Nobody wants a Khabib that gets 21 minutes of control time. The thing that was great about Khabib is that he would grab your wrist, roll it in, and punch you in the face or grab a hold of your neck until you quit. And that's what fighting is. Khabib's a fighter, and Jailton Almeida last night sounds like he was a jiu-jitsu guy, and nothing wrong with that. I love jiu-jitsu as much as the next guy, but, it's about fighting. And if you're not out there to fight, I don't like that bullshit. So that's what I would say, Dixon. Appreciate you asking, brother. Any other questions that you guys have? Juan says, you think Alessandro Costa beat Urseg? No, I was saying I think Urseg wins. I think he probably wins on pace. But I also have to do more research before I feel good about that because Costa's coming in here on short notice. I think that Urseg is good, not great. And I do think last time out, he's plus 200, much more easy click type of spot. Whereas now minus 160, got to be a lot more sure for me to fire off at a number like that. Shout out to Marcel. He says, I bet to win. Don't follow the masses. The M is silent. You damn right, Marcel. Sometimes they don't know their ass from a hole in the ground. That's what a professor of mine once said. And it stuck with me. So shout out to that. Any ideas on the guest Thursday, says Gobbler? It's probably going to be me and my guy Just Win holding it down once again. But if you guys have other special guests that you want to hear from, whether that's on the post weigh-in show or whether that is on Bets and Banter on Thursday, make sure that you fire those off in the comments below. I really appreciate when you do. And last but not least, the final question of the stream, Dixon says, Liam, I missed the Van and Borjas analysis. Who did you pick? I ended up picking Borjas. Very, subjective, prospective pick here, but I thought it was impressive for Van to go out there and get the win last time. I think he's a good fighter, but last time out, he was plus 185, got a split decision win. Now he's minus 2XX against another guy who's young, 25 years of age, big guy in Borjas, tough Peruvian kid. Seems like he's got some skills as well. Just seems to me like a fight's going to probably play out close. So I would have to lean towards the underdog or passing there. Pre-research, my brother. So, of course, going to do a little bit more due diligence. But that's how I'm feeling, guys. And that's my first look at UFC 295. I'm expecting a fantastic card. I'm expecting to make a lot of money. We did well last week. We did well the week before on the pay-per-view. Hoping to just keep the ball rolling. I truly appreciate each and every one of you guys for the support, whether you're listening on YouTube, whether you're listening on podcast platforms. Either way, I appreciate you from the bottom of my heart. Thank you guys for the support. If you guys want more of what I do, at Liam Picks Fights everywhere. That's on podcast platforms. That's on social media. And that's right here on YouTube, picking fights each and every week. Thank you all. God bless you all. And until next time, come back and we're having all the same fun again. Take care, everybody.